The first time they made me eat alone, I was 9 years old. Christmas Eve. My sister Miranda had just performed a flawless violin solo for 30 relatives. Crystal glasses clinked. Someone called her a prodigy. And when I asked my mother if I could have another role, she looked at me like I'd just reminded her of something she was trying very hard to forget. Not now, Elena. We're celebrating. That was the word they always used. Celebrating Miranda. Celebrating Harvard. Celebrating the daughter who actually mattered. My name is Elena Vega, and for 26 years, my family treated me like a ghost who hadn't figured out she was dead yet. But on the night my sister accepted a partnership at the most powerful law firm in Chicago, in front of 400 people, a man in a gray suit handed me an envelope that would burn my family's empire to the ground. What my parents didn't know. My grandmother had been keeping receipts the entire time. The Vegas were old Chicago money. The kind of family whose name sits on hospital wings and university libraries. My father, Richard Vega, ran Vega Holdings, a commercial real estate empire my grandmother Camila had built from a single storefront in Humboldt Park in 1972. By 2023, the company was worth just over $80 million. I was born with dyslexia. Diagnosed at 8. The letters on a page would slide and scatter, turning simple sentences into mazes that took me 4 times longer to solve than anyone else. My parents' response wasn't help. It was shame. When I was 10, they hired tutors for Miranda. Private school admissions consultants. A chess coach who trained national champions. When I asked for extra time on my reading assignments, my mother just sighed. Elena, we've already spent thousands on specialists. At some point, we have to accept that some children just aren't built for academics. I was 10 years old. I believed her. So I learned to survive on my own. Audiobooks became my escape. I started drawing everything: maps of conversations, diagrams of arguments, visual webs that helped me understand the world in a way words never could. And every Saturday morning, I would take the bus to my grandmother's apartment in Pilsen, where she would sit with me for hours, not making me read a single page. You process slow, she told me once, her hand squeezing mine. Her name was Camila. She'd come from Mexico with nothing in 1965. But you see what everyone else walks right past. That's not a weakness, Mija. That's a different kind of smart. I didn't understand what she meant then. But I would. First, I had to survive another 16 years of being the Vega family's embarrassing secret. Thanksgiving, 2017. 25 relatives around the table in my parents' Gold Coast townhouse. The annual performance of Vega family perfection. My father stood at the head of the table, wine glass raised. I have an announcement, he said, his voice smooth as the $500 bottle he was holding. Miranda has been accepted to Yale Law School. Full scholarship. Applause. Cheers. Miranda blushed on cue. My oldest daughter, my father continued, beaming, will be the first Vega to attend an Ivy League in 2 generations. She's going to take this family, this company, to places I never dreamed. More applause. My uncle clapped Miranda on the back. My aunt actually cried. Then my father's eyes found me. And Elena, he said. The warmth drained from his voice like someone pulling a plug. Well. Elena is also here. A few relatives laughed. Uncomfortable. The kind of laugh people make when they don't know what else to do. Miranda didn't defend me. She laughed along with them. I stared at my plate. The turkey blurred through tears I refused to let fall. Under the table, a hand found mine. Thin fingers, papery skin. My grandmother Camila, seated across from me, squeezed once. Hard. When I looked up, her eyes were burning. Not with sadness. With fury. Directed at her own son. She didn't say anything that night. But 3 months later, she called me to her apartment and told me she needed to show me something important. I didn't know it then, but that Thanksgiving dinner, that small, casual cruelty in front of 24 witnesses, had lit a fuse that would take 5 years to reach the dynamite. After graduating from a state school in 2022, not Yale, never Yale, I applied for a job at Vega Holdings. I wanted to prove I could contribute. That the family business could be my path too. My father agreed to hire me as an administrative assistant. Salary, $44,000 a year. That same month, Miranda joined as general counsel. Her salary, $290,000. Plus bonuses. My job was printing documents, booking flights, and getting coffee for executives who never remembered my name. I wasn't invited to a single meeting. Never shown a single contract. But I watched. And I listened. And I discovered something about myself in those long, quiet hours. I could see patterns that everyone else missed. When executives talked deals in the hallway, I would sketch diagrams in my notebook, the relationships between parties, the flow of money, the hidden conflicts. A skill I'd developed to survive my own brain had become something else entirely. My grandmother Camila had taught me this. On those Saturday mornings, she would spread out old contracts from the early days of Vega Holdings and show me how to read them, not word by word, but as systems. Architectures. Your father reads contracts like a lawyer, she told me once in 2018, right before her health started failing. He looks for what he can take. You read them like a builder. You see how every piece connects to every other piece. That same day, she handed me a small wooden box. Mahogany. Brass hinges. Keep this safe, she said. Don't open it yet. When you need it, you'll know. I took the box home, buried it in my closet, and tried to forget the strange weight of her words. April 2019. My grandmother's apartment. She was 82 then, her body failing, but her eyes, those sharp, knowing eyes, hadn't dimmed at all. Sit down, Elena. I sat across from her in the living room where I'd spent so many Saturdays. The walls were covered in photographs. Camila breaking ground on her first West Side property. Camila shaking hands with Mayor Daley. Camila accepting a business award in 1985. Not a single photo of my father at the helm. I built Vega Holdings from nothing, she said, her voice carrying decades of steel. One office. One secretary. 47 years of work. She paused. Something bitter crossed her face. Your father inherited it. He didn't build it. He doesn't understand what it means to create something. Grandma, he judges people by their credentials, she cut me off. Their schools. Their ability to perform in boardrooms. Me. She leaned forward. I judge people by how they treat the ones who can't fight back. And you, Elena, you're the only one in this family who knows how to be kind. She pressed the wooden box into my hands. There's something inside that might help you someday. But not yet. You're not ready. And neither is Richard. Her grip tightened. When the time comes, when he shows you exactly who he is, you'll know what to do. I wanted to ask what she meant. What was inside? Why she'd chosen me. But she changed the subject. Started talking about her garden. The book she was reading. 18 months later, she was gone. Pancreatic cancer. I held her hand in the hospice. The only family member at her bedside. The box stayed in my closet. Unopened. April 2024. The email came on a Wednesday afternoon. Subject line, position restructuring, confidential. Dear Ms. Vega, as part of our ongoing organizational optimization, your current position will be eliminated. Effective July 1, 2024. HR will contact you regarding severance options. I read it 6 times. The letter swam and reassembled into the same devastating message. They were firing me. That evening, I stayed late organizing files no one would ever look at. Through the thin wall separating my cubicle from my father's corner office, I heard voices. Richard and my mother, Patricia. I can't have her here when Miranda takes over, my father was saying. It looks bad. The CEO's sister working as a secretary. People will ask questions. What kind of questions? Why she's not in leadership. Why we haven't promoted her. Why she's, a pause. Why she is the way she is. My mother's response came soft. Almost gentle. We've done everything we could for her, Richard. Some children just don't have what it takes. Exactly. So she needs to go. Generous severance. She can find something more suited to her abilities. I pressed my palm against the wall. $44,000 a year. My studio apartment in Pilsen, shared with 2 roommates, cost me $1,400 a month. No savings. No safety net. If I lost this job, I'd be homeless in 10 weeks. But the money wasn't what made my chest cave in. It was the realization settling into my bones like ice water. If I let them do this, if I accepted their version of who I was, I would spend the rest of my life as the family failure. Not because I'd actually failed, but because I'd never been given the chance to succeed. Miranda's partnership celebration was tomorrow. I wondered what other announcements my father had planned. June 12, 2024. The Drake Hotel. Grand Ballroom. 400 guests filled the gilded room. Business partners. Investors. Lawyers from firms that billed by the minute. Extended family members I barely recognized. Crystal chandeliers. A string quartet playing something expensive. This was Richard Vega's kingdom. His stage. The place where he performed his role as patriarch, as mogul, as the man who had everything. I stood in the entrance, pulling at the hem of my dress. Black. Simple. $80 from Zara, the most I could afford. Everyone else glittered in designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. My mother intercepted me before I could find a seat. Elena. Her eyes traveled from my drugstore makeup to my scuffed flats. Her lips pressed into a thin line. You couldn't find anything nicer. This is what I have. Fine. She adjusted her diamond bracelet. You'll be at table 19. Near the kitchen entrance. Try not to draw attention to yourself. She started to walk away, then turned back. And Elena. She leaned closer. Her perfume was overwhelming. Tonight is Miranda's night. Whatever you're feeling, whatever resentment you think you're entitled to, keep it to yourself. Don't embarrass us. She was gone before I could respond. Table 19 was at the back of the ballroom, hidden behind a pillar. My tablemates were cousins I'd met maybe twice. From my seat, I could barely see the main stage, the massive portrait of Miranda in her Yale regalia, the banner reading "Congratulations, Miranda Vega, partner, Thompson and Reed." And near the entrance, standing alone by the doors, a silver-haired man in a navy suit. He wasn't mingling. Wasn't eating. Just watching. His eyes found mine across the crowded room. Something cold ran down my spine. At 8:30, the quartet stopped. Lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the stage where my father stood, champagne glass raised. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us to celebrate an extraordinary young woman. The applause started before he finished the sentence. Miranda graduated top of her Yale law class. She clerked for Justice Caldwell. And last month, she made partner at Thompson and Reed faster than anyone in the firm's history. My father's voice swelled with pride. But tonight, I'm not just celebrating her achievements. I'm announcing her future. Miranda joined him on stage. Radiant. Emerald green gown. Effective immediately, Miranda Vega will inherit my entire estate upon my passing. This includes the family residence on Astor Street, currently valued at $11 million. And most importantly, he paused for effect. The position of CEO of Vega Holdings when I retire. The room erupted. Standing ovation. Camera flashes. Miranda dabbed at her eyes with practiced grace. 400 people celebrating. Not one of them glanced at table 19. The cousin beside me, a woman I'd met at a funeral 5 years ago, leaned over. Elena, right. So, what does that mean for you? I opened my mouth. Closed it. What could I say? That I'd just been formally erased from my own family. That the termination letter in my inbox was only the beginning. The applause died down. Miranda hugged my father. Cameras clicked. And through the crowd, the silver-haired man at the door began walking toward me. Slowly. Deliberately. Like he'd been waiting for this exact moment. He stopped at my table. Up close, I could see he was older than I'd thought. Early 60s. Deep-set eyes. The careful posture of someone who'd spent his life in courtrooms. Ms. Vega. That's me. I straightened in my chair. Can I help you? My name is Jonathan Harris. He pulled a business card from his breast pocket. Cream-colored. Embossed. Harris and Associates. Attorneys at law. I was your grandmother's lawyer. My grandmother. The words hit like a punch. Camila passed away 3 years ago. I'm aware. He didn't sit. Didn't soften. She left something for you. With very specific instructions about when to deliver it. From inside his jacket, he produced a cream envelope. Heavy stock. Sealed with red wax bearing a notary stamp. What is this? Her will. The real one. His voice dropped. The one your father doesn't know exists. I stared at the envelope. The notary seal read Harris and Associates. August 12, 2019. 4 months after that Saturday afternoon in her apartment. 4 months after she'd handed me the wooden box. I don't understand. Your grandmother gave me explicit instructions. I was to deliver this document on the day your father publicly disinherited you. Harris glanced toward the stage where Richard and Miranda were still basking in applause. I believe that just occurred. My hands trembled as I took the envelope. Mr. Harris, what's in here? For the first time, something almost like warmth flickered in his eyes. Mrs. Camila told me to tell you this. Give this to Elena on the day Richard shows her exactly who he is. By then, she'll be ready. He straightened his tie. I'll be available when you have questions. You have my card. Then he turned and walked away. Disappeared into the crowd. I couldn't breathe in that ballroom. I pushed through the service entrance, found an empty hallway near the kitchen. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The sounds of celebration faded to a distant hum. My fingers shook as I broke the wax seal. Inside, 3 pages of dense legal text. A notarized signature. A date, August 12, 2019. I read slowly. Carefully. The letters swam, but I forced them into focus. I, Camila Elena Vega, being of sound mind and body, do hereby revoke all previous testamentary documents and declare this to be my last will and testament. My eyes caught on a paragraph near the middle. To my granddaughter, Elena Marie Vega, I bequeath 52% of my shares in Vega Holdings LLC, currently valued at approximately $43 million, along with all voting rights associated therewith. I read it again. And again. 52%. Controlling interest. The will continued. This bequest is made with full knowledge of my son Richard's treatment of Elena. She has been excluded, diminished, and denied opportunity, not due to lack of ability, but due to lack of support. Elena is not slow. Elena was abandoned. And I will not allow her father's prejudice to continue after my death. A sob caught in my throat. My grandmother had seen everything. Condition: to activate this bequest, Elena must formally request an emergency board meeting within 72 hours of receiving this document. Failure to act within this window will render this will null and void, and all assets shall transfer per my 2015 testament. 72 hours. The deadline would fall at 8:30 p.m. on June 15th. I leaned against the cold wall, the document clutched to my chest. My grandmother had given me a weapon. Now I had to decide if I was brave enough to use it. Jonathan Harris was waiting by the coat check when I emerged. You read it. The 72-hour clause. My voice cracked. Why would she put that in? Your grandmother knew you, Ms. Vega. He handed me a second card, this one with a personal cell number handwritten on the back. She knew that if she gave you unlimited time, you might convince yourself not to act. The deadline isn't a punishment. It's permission. Permission to stop waiting for your family to change their minds about you. To take what's rightfully yours. He checked his watch. The deadline is 8:30 p.m., June 15th. 3 days. If you want to proceed, you'll need to submit a formal request for an emergency board meeting. I can help you draft it. Through the ballroom doors, I could see my father still on stage, posing for photos with Miranda. My mother circulating among guests, accepting congratulations as if she'd earned them herself. If I did this, if I invoked the will, I would destroy every relationship I had left. My parents would never forgive me. Miranda would see it as betrayal. But if I stayed silent, I would accept their verdict. I would become exactly what they'd always said I was. The failure. The slow one. The daughter who didn't matter. Ms. Vega. Harris's voice cut through my spiral. Your grandmother believed in you. She spent the last 3 years of her life preparing for this moment. The question is, do you believe in yourself? I looked at the will in my hands. At the signature of the woman who'd held my hand under Thanksgiving tables and taught me to read contracts like blueprints. I'll call you tomorrow, I said. We're requesting that board meeting. Harris allowed himself a small smile. She said you would. That night, back in my cramped apartment, I finally opened the wooden box. My roommates were asleep. The only light came from the street lamp outside my window, casting orange stripes across my bed where I sat cross-legged, the box in my lap. The brass hinges creaked as I lifted the lid. Inside, a handwritten letter on Camila's personal stationery. A faded document with a 1972 date stamp. And a USB drive, sleek and modern, clearly added much later. I reached for the letter first. My dearest Elena, if you're reading this, then Jonathan has done his job, and your father has done exactly what I feared he would. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you while I was alive. But I can protect you now. The enclosed document is the original partnership agreement from 1972, when I founded Vega Holdings with 2 partners who have long since passed. Your father has never seen it. It establishes that the founders' shares carry permanent voting rights that cannot be diluted or transferred without board approval. The USB contains something else. Something your father hoped I'd forgotten. Asterisk in 2017, Richard proposed a resolution to reduce my voting rights from 52% to 10%. His stated reason, I was too old to understand modern business. The real reason, he wanted control, and I was in his way. Asterisk the board rejected his proposal by 2 votes. I was one of those votes. I never forgot what he tried to do. And I never forgave him for the way he treated you to justify it, as though diminishing you somehow proved I was unfit. Use this wisely, Elena. Not for revenge. For justice. All my love, Grandma Camila. I plugged the USB into my laptop. The file was labeled, Board Meeting Minutes, March 2017. My father's attempt to strip his own mother of power. Documented. Timestamped. Evidence. June 13, 9 a.m. Margaret Flores answered on the second ring. Elena Vega. I've been wondering when you'd call. You know who I am. Sweetheart, your grandmother and I built half the West Side together in the 70s. She talked about you constantly. A pause. She also told me about the will. 3 years ago. Right before she passed. I gripped my phone tighter. Then you know what I'm about to do. I know what you're considering doing. There's a difference. Margaret's tone shifted. Sharper. More businesslike. You want to request an emergency board meeting. That requires 3 board members to sign the petition. I'm one. You'll need 2 more. Can you help me find them? I can do better than that. I heard papers shuffling in the background. Richard Vega isn't as popular as he thinks. His management style is, let's call it autocratic. At least 5 board members have expressed concerns privately. They just need someone to go first. Hope sparked in my chest. Who? Richard Holloway. Susan Park. They've both been on the receiving end of your father's temper in closed sessions. I'll make some calls. Another pause. Elena, I need you to understand something. This isn't going to be pleasant. Your father will fight. Your sister will fight. They'll say terrible things. They've been saying terrible things my whole life. At least now I get to respond. Margaret laughed. A warm, genuine sound. Camila always said you had steel under all that quiet. I'm starting to see what she meant. She cleared her throat. I'll have the petition ready by tonight. Board meeting request, June 15, 10 a.m. Vega Tower, 44th floor. Thank you, Margaret. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when you're sitting in that boardroom. June 14. My father found out about the board meeting at 3 p.m. I know because Miranda called me 40 minutes later, her voice tight with barely controlled fury. What did you do? I was sitting in my cubicle at Vega Holdings, pretending to organize files. I don't know what you're talking about. Dad just got a notice from the board secretary. Emergency meeting tomorrow. Requested by Margaret Flores and 2 other directors. A pause. Sharp as broken glass. Margaret Flores hasn't requested anything in 15 years. What did you do? Maybe she has concerns about company management. Don't play games with me, Elena. Miranda's composure cracked. If you're trying to embarrass us, trying to make some kind of scene, I'm just doing my job, Miranda. Same as always. She hung up without saying goodbye. 20 minutes later, my father stormed past my cubicle on his way to his office. He didn't look at me. Didn't acknowledge I existed. Just slammed his door hard enough to rattle the windows. Through the wall, I heard him on the phone. Ridiculous waste of time. Margaret's probably going senile. We'll address her concerns and move on. A pause. No, I'm not worried. Elena. My God, Miranda, she can barely read a spreadsheet. She's not a threat to anyone. I smiled. For the first time in 26 years, being underestimated felt like an advantage. That night, in my apartment, I prepared. Printed 3 copies of the will. Downloaded the 2017 board minutes to my phone as backup. Wrote a brief statement, not an accusation. Just facts. Jonathan Harris confirmed he'd attend as the authenticating attorney. Margaret texted at 11 p.m., petition filed. See you tomorrow. Your grandmother would be proud. I barely slept. But for once, it wasn't anxiety keeping me awake. It was anticipation. June 15, 2024. 9:45 a.m. Vega Tower. The elevator opened onto the 44th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Italian marble. The kind of corporate opulence designed to intimidate. I stepped out in a borrowed gray blazer, my roommates, 2 sizes too big, carrying a leather portfolio I'd bought at Goodwill for $12. The security guard at the boardroom door held up his hand. Name. Elena Vega. He checked his tablet. Frowned. You're not on the authorized attendee list. I'm a Vega Holdings employee and I have business with the board. Ma'am, this is a restricted meeting. I can't let you, is there a problem? Miranda's voice behind me. I turned. She looked immaculate. Navy power suit. Hermes scarf. The uniform of someone who belonged in boardrooms. Elena. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. What are you doing here? I have information to present to the board. Information. Miranda laughed. A sharp, performative sound. About what? You work in the copy room. The nature of my presentation is confidential. You don't even know what ROI stands for. Return on investment. It's not that complicated. Miranda's smile flickered. Before she could respond, my father appeared at the end of the hallway, flanked by two senior executives. What's going on here? Elena wants to attend the board meeting, Miranda said. I was just explaining that's not possible. My father looked at me the way he always did. Like I was a stain he couldn't quite scrub out. Elena, go back to your desk. This doesn't concern you. Actually, a voice called from inside the boardroom, it does. Margaret Flores appeared in the doorway. 73 years old. Silver-haired. Standing with the quiet authority of someone who'd been building empires when my father was still in diapers. I invited her. She is standing to address the board. Margaret smiled. Let her in. My father's jaw tightened. For a moment, I thought he might physically block the door. But Margaret Flores had been a board member for 35 years. Her authority in that room exceeded his. Fine. My father's voice was ice. Let her speak. We'll see how long it takes before she embarrasses herself. The boardroom was smaller than I'd imagined. Oval table of polished walnut. 14 leather chairs. Portraits of past executives on the walls, including, I noticed, my grandmother Camila, her painted eyes seeming to watch from above the fireplace. 14 board members took their seats. My father at the head. Miranda to his right, not officially a board member yet, but positioned as heir apparent. I was directed to a chair at the far end. The children's table of corporate governance. In the corner, Jonathan Harris sat with his briefcase. He caught my eye. Nodded once. Robert Hartley, the board chairman, a distinguished man in his mid-60s who'd known my grandmother for decades, called the meeting to order. This emergency session was requested by Margaret Flores, Richard Holloway, and Susan Parker. Margaret, you have the floor. Margaret rose. Thank you, Robert. I'll keep my remarks brief. She gestured toward me. The matter I wish to address concerns a document that has recently come to light. A document that affects the ownership structure of this company. I yield my time to Ms. Elena Vega. All eyes turned to me. Miranda smirked. My father leaned back in his chair with theatrical boredom. I stood. My hands were steadier than I expected. Thank you, Mrs. Flores. And thank you to the board for allowing me to speak. I opened my portfolio. What I'm about to present may come as a surprise to some of you. I ask only that you listen to the evidence before reaching any conclusions. My father sighed audibly. I ignored him. Before I could continue, he raised his hand. I'm sorry, Robert, but before we waste the board's valuable time, he stood, buttoning his jacket with deliberate slowness. I need to provide some context. Richard, Margaret started. Elena is my daughter. His voice carried that patronizing warmth he used for difficult clients. And I love her. But she's not qualified to address this board on any business matter. She works in an administrative role. No legal training. No financial background. No strategic experience. Miranda chimed in, her tone dripping with false sympathy. Elena also has dyslexia. She struggles with reading. We've tried to support her, but, she shrugged elegantly. Some limitations can't be overcome with effort alone. A few board members shifted uncomfortably. What we're seeing here, my father continued, is a troubled young woman acting out. Perhaps due to the announcement at Miranda's party. Sibling jealousy, Mr. Vega. Robert Hartley's voice cut through like a gavel. You'll have an opportunity to respond. But Ms. Vega requested this time, and she's entitled to use it. My father sat down. His expression promised consequences. Miranda caught my eye and mouthed, "You're embarrassing yourself." I looked at them both, my father, my sister, and felt something shift inside me. Not anger. Something colder. Clearer. They weren't trying to protect me. They weren't even trying to protect the company. They were trying to protect their version of the story. The version where I was nothing. Thank you, Mr. Hartley. I pulled the document from my portfolio. I won't be discussing my reading ability today. I'll be discussing this. I held up the will. The room went silent. This is the last will and testament of Camila Elena Vega, founder of this company. Notarized August 12, 2019. My father's face drained of color. That's impossible. His voice came out strangled. My mother's will was executed in 2015. I have a copy. You have a copy of her previous will. I kept my voice level. Clinical. Under Illinois Estates and Trusts law, a subsequent valid will automatically revokes all prior testamentary documents. This will, I placed it on the table, was executed 4 years after the one you possess. I slid the document to Robert Hartley. Mr. Harris, I gestured to Jonathan, who rose from his corner seat, would you please confirm the authenticity of this document? Jonathan approached the table. I'm Jonathan Harris, partner at Harris & Associates. I served as Camila Vega's personal attorney from 2007 until her death in 2021. I can confirm this will was executed in my presence on August 12, 2019. It was witnessed by 2 independent notaries, and the original is held in escrow at Chase Private Client. Robert Hartley studied the document. His eyebrows rose. This will bequeaths 52% of Vega Holdings shares to, he looked up at me. To you, Ms. Vega. Murmurs rippled around the table. That's a forgery, Miranda said. But her voice had lost its confidence. It's not. Jonathan's response was immediate. And I'd advise you against making accusations of fraud without evidence, Ms. Vega. Harris & Associates' reputation speaks for itself. My father slammed his palm on the table. This is absurd. My mother was ill. She was being manipulated. Manipulated. I pulled out my phone. Perhaps you'd like to explain this, then. I pressed play on the 2017 board meeting audio. My father's voice filled the room. Camila is 81 years old. She doesn't understand modern business. I moved to reduce her voting rights to 10%. The recording ended. The silence that followed was absolute. That recording, my father's face had turned a mottled purple, was a private board discussion, which Camila attended. I recorded it, as was her right as a shareholder. I kept my voice steady. Robert Hartley set down the will. His expression had shifted from neutral to something harder. Ms. Vega, would you read the relevant passage aloud? For the record. I nodded. Took a breath. To my granddaughter, Elena Marie Vega, I bequeath 52% of my shares in Vega Holdings LLC, along with all voting rights associated therewith. I paused, letting the words settle. This bequest is made with full knowledge of my son Richard's treatment of Elena. She has been excluded, diminished, and denied opportunity, not due to lack of ability, but due to lack of support. Miranda made a choking sound. Elena is not slow. Elena was abandoned. And I will not allow her father's prejudice to continue after my death. I looked directly at my father. Richard has confused credentials with character. Degrees with worth. He tried to strip me of my voting rights because I saw through him. He marginalized Elena because she reminded him of the kind of person he refuses to be. My father said nothing. His hands, I noticed, were trembling. I built this company from nothing. I choose who carries it forward. I choose Elena. Robert Hartley removed his reading glasses. Mr. Harris, you can confirm this document is legally binding. I can. The 2015 will is superseded. As of this moment, Elena Vega is the majority shareholder of Vega Holdings. Margaret Flores smiled quietly. Richard Holloway and Susan Parker exchanged glances. And for the first time in my life, I watched my father look at me with something other than dismissal. It was fear. This doesn't prove anything, Miranda said. But her voice had turned brittle. Even if the will is valid, which we will contest, Elena has no business experience. She can't run a company. I'm not asking to run the company. I addressed the full board now. I'm asking you to examine the facts. I pulled the 2017 board minutes from my portfolio. March 14, 2017. Richard Vega proposed Resolution 2017-2004 to reduce Camila Vega's voting shares from 52% to 10%. I found the passage. The founder is no longer capable of understanding modern business operations. That was taken out of context, my father said. The resolution failed by 2 votes. Camila's vote and Margaret Flores's. I looked at Margaret. Is that accurate? Margaret nodded slowly. It is. Camila called me that night. She was devastated. Not because of the resolution, she knew it would fail. But because her own son had tried to take everything she'd built. This is ancient history, my father started. It's evidence. I cut him off. Evidence that my grandmother wasn't suffering from diminished capacity when she wrote that 2019 will. She was protecting herself from her own son. And she was protecting me. Robert Hartley looked around the table. Does anyone else have documentation contradicting what's been presented? Silence. My father's jaw worked. No words came. Miranda stared at the table. Her perfect composure had cracked entirely. Richard Holloway spoke for the first time. Robert, I think we need to recess and have legal counsel review these documents. Agreed. Hartley checked his watch. We'll reconvene in 15 minutes. Mr. Harris, please remain available. The board members rose. Conversations broke out in hushed tones. My father didn't move. He sat frozen, staring at his mother's portrait on the wall. I wondered if he could feel her watching. 15 minutes stretched into 45. The board's legal counsel, a thin man named Patterson whom I'd never met, spent the entire time on his phone with Harris and Associates, Chase private client, and the Illinois State Court's records office. I sat alone at the end of the table. Jonathan Harris brought me a glass of water. Margaret Flores patted my shoulder as she passed. My father and Miranda huddled in the corner, their whispered argument growing increasingly heated. Finally, Patterson returned to the table and whispered in Robert Hartley's ear. Hartley's expression flickered. Surprise. Then resignation. Please take your seats. The board members filed back to their chairs. The tension in the room had crystallized into something brittle. Our legal counsel has confirmed the following. Hartley read from his notes. The will presented by Ms. Vega is valid under Illinois state law. It supersedes all previous testamentary documents. Effective immediately, Elena Vega holds 52% of Vega Holdings shares. Someone inhaled sharply. Additionally, Hartley continued, as majority shareholder, Ms. Vega has the right to propose motions to the board, including matters pertaining to executive leadership. He looked at me. Ms. Vega, do you have any motions you wish to bring forward? I stood. My heart was pounding, but my voice held steady. I have one motion. My father rose from his seat. Robert, sit down, Richard. Hartley's voice carried unexpected steel. Ms. Vega has the floor. My father sat. His face had gone gray. I looked around the table at 14 people who, until an hour ago, had never considered me capable of anything. Now they waited for my decision. The power to destroy my father's career was in my hands. I thought about what my grandmother would want. And I made my choice. I'm not proposing to remove Richard Vega as CEO. The tension in the room shifted. Miranda's head snapped up. Even Margaret looked surprised. What I am proposing, I continued, is a vote of confidence. The board will decide whether Richard Vega retains their confidence as CEO of Vega Holdings. If the majority votes no confidence, he resigns. If the majority votes confidence, I will not interfere with operational leadership during my tenure as majority shareholder. This is absurd. Miranda stood. You're turning this into a spectacle. A revenge fantasy. No. I met her eyes.